I'm Ken Roberts. Welcome to LAX Trade Trends 2020 Trade Update. As I said, I'm Ken Roberts. I'm the president of WorldCity. I'm a contributor to Forbes.com. I write 5 columns every month about import-export trade issues. The column I wrote and posted just this morning is about oil exports from the United States and China's role in that process. I'm a member of the Federal Reserve's Trade and Transportation Advisory Board. I'm just completing my second 3-year term on that board. I'm one of about 12 members from around that sit on this board. WorldCity analyzes monthly U.S. Census Bureau data at ustradenumbers.com. Perhaps you've been there. We have a page for LAX, for Port of Los Angeles, for Port of Long Beach, for more than 450 different airports, seaports, and border crossings around the country, for more than 200 countries, for more than 1,800 specific exports and import commodities, updated monthly. We started publishing annual trade numbers publications in 2001. In 2006, we published Los Angeles trade numbers for the first time. And over the years, we published trade numbers publications, annual trade numbers publications for more than 20 markets around the country. Once a week, I release a Trade Matters video on our YouTube channel. I speak on international trade to Fortune 500 companies, national and local trade organizations, and more. We've done webinars like this in Texas, in Florida. We've got one coming up in Pennsylvania, South Carolina. So we're doing webinars like this around the country. We could not do this event without the support of our sponsors. Los Angeles World Airports, the parent of LAX, as many of you know, or most of you know, maybe all of you know. The Los Angeles Air Cargo Association, which is celebrating its 55th birthday this year, anniversary, and the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. If you have questions, enter those questions at any time in the Q&A queue there. You can also be in the chat. I will try to look in that, keep my eye on the Q&A queue and see if there's questions I can answer at that moment. But we'll definitely have a Q&A period after the presentation as well. So there'll be plenty of time to ask any questions you might have and to engage in any discussion you would like. So as I said, we've been publishing Los Angeles trade numbers since 2006. This is the 2020 version. If you've seen previous versions and you have now seen this version, you know there was a complete redesign instituted this year. We're really excited about it. It's loaded with colorful infographics and essential trade data. The Customs District total trade for 2019 was $428.23 billion. As most of you know, Los Angeles is almost always the #1 ranked customs district in the nation, has been for all but a couple of years for the last quarter century. We also published the 2020 LAX trade numbers pocket-sized pamphlet, and this one is designed to fit in your jacket pocket or a purse or a backpack. In the bottom left, you'll see that there will list the top 25 exports and imports and show whether they were up or down. In the upper right, you see when it folds open, you have a map of the world that shows the relative importance of the top 25 trade partners, which account for about 93% of all Los Angeles trade. So we're going to start with a trade overview, and before we do that, we're going to give you a quick quiz. So if you give me just 1 second to launch this poll here. So here's your first question, and I hope you can see this. There are more than 450 U.S. airports, seaports, and border crossings in the United States. Where does LAX rank this year? And by this year, I mean in the month of August. So the answers are coming in great. Okay, so you can see it. So we'll give you guys just a little bit of time to sort of take your crack at that and see how you do. And then we'll reveal that answer in just a moment. I'm going to give it another second until the answers start slowing down here. It looks like they've slowed down. Oh, and by the way, these answers are anonymous. If you have any concerns about that, I put the anonymous buttons. I don't really need to see how you voted. And I think I'm going to go ahead and shut it off now and share the results with you. Before I show you the answer, I'll share the results with you. There you go. So 80% said in the top 5, 17% said in the top 10. Nobody said in the top 15, and it looks like one of you thought in the top 20. as you can see on the screen, LAX ranked number 9, okay, among 450, 475 airports, seaports, and border crossings. There's basically 2 airports ahead of it, Chicago O'Hare and JFK in New York. Otherwise, you've got some border crossings. You've got Port Laredo and Detroit's Ambassador Bridge, and then you got some seaports with the Port of Los Angeles, as you guys know well, as well as the Port of Newark, Port of Houston, and Port of New Orleans. So LAX is one of the nation's leading airports for cargo consistently among the top 3 airports and top 10 among airports. If you look now at 2019 year-to-date and August of 2020, you see the same numbers. Ranks number 9 among all ports and number 3 among all airports. So now we're going to switch to an overview of U.S. trade, and I'll explain how this works so it's clear. On the top portion in the right here, you see year-to-date data through August. And beneath that, you see just the month of August, which is the most recent data. August data was released just 2 days ago. The most recent month, we're going to compare August of 2020 to August of 2019 to try to sort of get an apples to apples situation going there. So on the top, you can see that you see a lot of red arrows, obviously, here, and that shouldn't be surprising to anyone, given the fact that we're in the middle of a global pandemic and an economic recession brought on by that. So overall trade, 2.4 trillion, down 13.16%, okay? Exports and imports are down. On the deficit there, we show it at 564.57 billion. We show the down figure. What that means down there is it's a lower number. It's a lower deficit. Some might consider that as a green light, but it's a lower number. It was about 575, somewhere in that range a year ago through August. If you scroll now, look down on the monthly total, okay, what you see is that change is 9.15%, okay? So what's interesting about that is that year-to-date trade is still down 13.16%. August, it was down 9.15%. It means the situation is improving. The rate of decline is dropping. To give you an example, in the month of May, when things really were at their worst, U.S. trade dropped almost 30% that month, almost 30%. So year-to-date, U.S. trade deficit down from a year ago, while it increased in the month of August from the previous August. You see that green arrow there for the deficit in the month of August. That increased because in this case, there was the difference in exports and imports actually increased. So let's now look at LAX. Okay, same sort of layout here. So on the top, you have year-to-date through August, and on the bottom, you have just the month of August compared to the previous August, okay? So here again, you see trade down 4.31% compared to the 8 months of the previous year, okay? Exports are down, but imports are up, and the deficit has increased slightly to 11.77 billion. On the month of August, you have, again, the same situation. Total trade down 4.83%, exports down, but imports are up. And again, the deficit has increased slightly. Important to look at those 2 percentages, though, 4.31 and 4.83, the decline. They're significantly lower than the national average. LAX, despite having a slight down year, is doing significantly better than the U.S. as a whole. So because LAX imports are growing faster than its exports, the trade deficit is increasing. So I've talked a bit about the trade deficit, and now I'm going to talk about something I like to call trade balance. The trade deficit is exports minus imports, okay? The trade balance is the percentage of trade that is an export and the percentage of trade that is an import. So before we do that, we'll, whoops, I didn't share those results with you last time. I apologize. This was results from the last 80% of you, and I apologize for that. 80% of you thought LAX was in the top 5. It was actually in the top 10, so a few of you get that right, okay? So let's go on to the next question here, and that is the trade balance question. So let me launch that poll. There you go. So LAX, like most U.S. airports, seaports, and border crossings, runs a trade deficit, meaning its imports are greater than the value of its exports. Is LA trade more balanced or less balanced than the U.S. average, okay? Is that percentage more balanced than the national average or less? And I'll give you guys a few seconds to see where you come down on this one. So, and a few of you have joined us after we started, I hope you didn't miss anything. But again, I'm watching the chat if you have any questions, or the Q&A if you have any questions. But we just started running through this. We haven't gotten to the export, import, or country section, which will be sort of the meat on the plate for this webinar. Okay, I've probably got the answers I'm going to get. I'm going to end this poll, and this time I will share the results before we show the answer. Got a few more trickling in here. Okay, so let's go ahead and end this poll, and this time I will share the results. How about that? So pretty evenly divided, but more about 62% said it was more balanced, and 38% said less balanced. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the next screen. And what we can see is this is U.S. trade, okay? So for the month of August, 64% were exports, 36% import. 64% imports, 36% exports, okay? So for every dollar of U.S. trade, 36 cents was an export and 64 cents an import, okay? Going back 10, 15, 20 years, that almost always has been around 40 cents on the dollar was an export. 41, 42, 39, sort of in that range, always, almost year in, year out. So the balance of trade, though it changes minimally, is more tilted toward imports than at any time in a decade, okay? So let's take a look now at LAX. This will be the answer to your question. So if you answered more balanced, you were correct. So the balance of trade for the month of August for LAX was 43% exports and 57% imports. So more balanced than that national average of 36 and 64. So there's the answer to that question. Now, the trade was significantly more balanced in LAX than August than the national average. Okay, so now we're going to move on to top exports, and as you probably have gathered by now, we're going to have another question for you. Okay. One of these was revealed to be a fast-growing LAX export in the most recent U.S. government data, ranking among the top 5 by value. Which one? And this is going to be for the month of August of 2020. And I'll tell you, these are not particularly simple questions. They're good just to sort of stimulate the conversation and so forth. And I see a question in the chat from how can we get a copy of the pocket brochure and annual report. Those are available at ustradenumbers.com. In our resource section, we have not only the LA area ones, but publications from around the country. The PDFs are free to download. If you want us to mail you a copy, there's a small charge for that. Okay, I think I've got all our voters in, people who want to vote are in. So let's go ahead and end that poll, and we'll share those results. So the number 1 answer was MRI machines and other medical devices, with about half the votes. Next after that would have been aircraft and related parts, then followed by a tie between computer chips and machines to make semiconductors, okay? All right. So here's what we're going to do here, and the answer will reveal itself in just a moment. So here's what we did is we looked at the top exports in August of 2019, and then we looked at the results they had for August of 2020, okay? So in 2019, these were the top 5 exports from LAX, but now we're saying how did they do in 2020, okay, when compared to August of 2019. So computer chips were down 17, almost 18%. Civilian aircraft and parts were down 51.5%. That one in particular should not come as a big surprise given what's going on in the global economy. Aircraft all over the world are grounded. People are not flying for business. People are not flying for vacation. So that one shouldn't be too of a surprise. Diamonds down 86% on the export side. Again, that one probably shouldn't come as too much of a surprise because what can't be happening now? It's hard to have a wedding now. Semiconductor manufacturing machinery is up 90.16% as an export, okay? And medical devices up 3.63%. So the big swings in diamonds and semiconductor manufacturing machinery over the last year, those are the 2 biggest swings. So let's go ahead and move on to August of 2020 and see how the top 5 then has shifted based on those results. So computer chips, even though they were down 17.88%, still ranked number 1. Semiconductor manufacturing machinery moved into the number 2 slot ahead of civilian aircraft and parts. Obviously, the Los Angeles area is a big hub for the aviation industry. You all know that. And that's just getting hit hard right now. We have a new entry into the top 5, and that's vaccines, plasma, and what's called blood fractions. And what that is red blood cells, white blood cells, often used in cancer treatments. So that category is up about almost 30%, 29.37%. Medical devices can be anything like MRI machines, EKG machines, can also be something as small and relatively inexpensive as needles and syringes. So the correct answer then was machines to make semiconductors, which were up 90.16%, okay? So now we'll move on to the imports, and let's see what question we have for you there. And I'm hoping you can see this. One of these was revealed to be a fast-growing LAX import in the most recent US government data, also among the top 5. Which one? N95 masks and other PPE, laptops and desktops, diamonds, vaccines, plasma, and other blood fractions. Let's see what we got. How many people got responding? I usually wait till it slows down a little bit. Still got a couple of people responding here. I'll give you a couple more seconds, then we'll. Oh yeah, they're still coming in all of a sudden. Here we go. People were thinking about this one. This one made people think a little bit. Oh yeah, answer's still coming. Okay. Okay, I'll end that poll and share the results. 80% say N95 masks and other PPE. A couple people said laptops and desktops, diamonds, vaccines, plasma, and blood fractions. Okay, so now we'll take a look at the correct answer in just a second. So here again, we're doing the same thing. So these were the top 5 imports into LAX in August of 2019, but we're showing you how they did in 2020 compared to 2019. So computers, which was one of the possible answers, up 77.90%. Cell phones up 6.16%. Semiconductor manufacturing machinery on the import side, a very different story, down 88.12%. I'll talk about that one in a minute. Computer chips up 9.17%, and returned exports, this is returned exports without change, down 29.86%. That category is part of a very big industry called the reverse logistics industry. They traditionally had a trade show every year. They had a publication, very big business, moving things back and forth. And what this category means for LAX is largely going to be dominated by things like aviation and tech. So computers, cell phones, laptops, as well as aviation, avionics and things like that. They leave the country, and for whatever reason, they come back to the country without any change, okay? Again, a very big business. You can see it's in terms of value, it ranked number 5 among all LAX imports in 2019. So large jump in computer imports. Why would that be? I speculate, could it be related to people setting up home offices? Could be, right? So let's move on to August of 2020 and see how the ranking shifted a little bit, what happened there. So again, computers still way up, still ranked number 1. Cell phones still ranked number 2. Computer chips at 9.17, number 3 up. New to the category now, the top 5, excuse me, are computer parts up 76.1.7%. I'll return to that in a minute. And then there's this category called articles made from fabric or textiles. And that even puzzled me when I first saw this number. And now they're up 9,191.8%, okay? And that, as I dug down into the data, it's articles, these articles made from textiles include N95 masks and some other PPE or personal protection equipment. Okay, so the correct answer to that one was in fact the N95 masks and other PPE. Big jump in there. And those about vast majority of those come from China, by the way, not surprisingly. Okay, so now we're going to look at the top trade partners, and you know what that means, that we have to launch our last question of the afternoon. Let me launch that. Among the top 5 LAX trade partners for total exports and imports, 4 are Asian nations. That's not a surprise. 1 is not. Which top 5 trade partner is not an Asian country? And again, I reiterate, I'm asking really tough questions. I must have not gotten a good night's sleep last night or something. These are really tough questions. But the answers are coming in. And again, if you have questions about any of this, go into the Q&A, enter your question in. I'll be happy to try to get to it. Because I believe we'll have some time at the end to answer a few questions for you. And I never know, because I can see when answers come in. I never know if they're actually as you're voting or is there a delay of some sort. So I usually let the number of responses slow down before I cut off the poll. But we've got a nice crowd today. I'm glad you're here, and I hope you're enjoying it, getting something out of it. All right, I'm going to end the poll here. I think we got a good sampling of responses here. Anybody else jump in quickly, or I'm going to cut you off. Okay. Let me share these results. So the number 1 answer was Canada, and I'll talk about why that might have been a good answer, but is not the correct answer in a minute. Australia got 7 votes, or 20%. So Canada was about 49%, and then United Kingdom at 14%, and last but not least, Germany at 14%. Okay, so let's now take a look at, and this is, by the way, for August of 2020 here. So this is, now we're looking at August of 2019, okay? And again, how they performed in August of 2020. Okay, so China, not a surprise probably to anybody, number 1, up 18.10%, a strong performance, mainly on the import side, as you can see there, up 25.14%. Japan off 25.31%. Imports down 36.85%. That decrease there on the imports is going to be in part the machinery for making semiconductors. A lot of those were coming from Japan. The Netherlands down 59, almost 60%. Imports down 91.89%. That import was also the same thing. It was equipment to manufacture semiconductors and parts. Okay. India down 68.77%, down on both the export and import side. That's largely, but not exclusively, going to be diamonds. India has supplanted Israel as the number 1 country with which the United States imports and exports diamonds. That happened about maybe a year or 2 ago, 2 to 3 years ago. What's happening now is, although LAX trade in diamonds was down about 68, 69%, the national average was down more than 50%. I think it was 52%, something like that. And these are the lowest totals on the import and export side in more than a decade for the United States. So it's a big, big change. But what's happened is that the import and export of diamonds has shifted somewhat from LA to JFK. JFK was always the biggest market for this trade, but LAX had a big piece of it within the last year or 2. But that has this year shifted, particularly even this month, in the month of August, sorry, shifted to JFK. So LAX has lost market share not only to the decline in imports and exports of diamonds, but also the shift to JFK. Taiwan trade up 25%, and exports and imports both up. So 3 of the top 5 trade partners from August 2019 saw their trade decrease: Japan, the Netherlands, and India. So let's look at August of 2020 and see where we are. So China's still number 1. Taiwan has moved up to number 2, slipping ahead of Japan. Okay, so Taiwan, strong performance, China, strong performance. Germany then is the correct answer to that poll question. Germany, even though its trade declined almost 9%, it is now the 4th ranked trade partner for LAX. A lot of that's going to be motor vehicle parts and things like that. South Korea moves into the top 5. Its trade up 30.60%. A lot of that on the import side. What is that? That's going to be motor vehicle parts and some of the semiconductor manufacturing equipment. So that's what we have there for the top trade partners. This is the point where I'm hoping you have a couple of questions for me. So there's a button there for you to click on and ask any questions you might have. I'm happy to try to answer them. I can tell you a couple of things while I wait for any questions that may come. U.S. trade, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, U.S. trade was down about 30% for the month of May. It dropped to 17% in June, to 10% in July, and just under 9% in August for the nation as a whole. So what you're seeing is it dropped very rapidly, but it has slowed up. So we're interested to see how the rest of the year goes. LAX, as I should highlight once again, is outperforming the rest of the country for a lot of reasons that I sort of went through in that presentation there. If we have no questions for me, then what we'll do is we'll move to the last. This is the answer to the question I had. Here's a question in the chat. Are PP coming into the U.S. through other ports as well, and or is LAX one of the primary ports for those coming in? LAX is a primary port. I did not check specifically to see what percentage of that was coming in through LAX, but it is a large percentage. But it is coming in through other ports and to some extent from some other countries, but largely from China. I think I wrote a column for Forbes on this very question within the last 2 weeks or so, but it's based on July data. I think 85% of my recollection serves were coming from China. So that's going to point heavily toward LAX. The reason these things would fly rather than sail is because they're lightweight and to some extent expensive, but mainly lightweight. So the rule of thumb in trade, as most of you know, is if it's heavy and inexpensive, it's going to go on a ship. If it's lightweight and expensive, or you don't want it in the supply chain any longer than it needs to be, then it's going to fly. So diamonds will fly, needless to say, and so with this equipment. But I think LAX, and I could get an answer to you later, to Scott, if LAX ranks first in that category. I'd be very surprised if it's not at least in the top 2 or 3 among all the airports and seaports around the country. Any other questions? So I'll remind you then that you can go to ustradenumbers.com and you can download your copy of the full publication as a PDF or the pamphlet as a PDF. We also have U.S. trade numbers up there. We have a number of other publications. You can download any or all of them that you wish. If you want us to mail you a copy, we're happy to do that, but there's sort of a charge to basically cover our postage and handling. And that's sort of what that covers there. So, as always, I want to close by thanking our sponsors again. So LAWA, Los Angeles World Airports, parent of LAX, the Los Angeles Air Cargo Association, celebrating its 55th anniversary, and the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. If you want to keep in touch with us, there are many ways to do that. We are on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we're on LinkedIn. I spend most of my time on LinkedIn in terms of social channels. We're also on YouTube, I should mention. We have a YouTube channel where you can watch the Trade Matters videos. So you can subscribe to that if you want, or just go in there and check them out. You can call us at any time. Our phone number is right there at the bottom in the center. And my email address for any additional questions or comments are at kroberts@ustradenumbers.com. If there's not anything else, any other questions or comments, I will say have a great weekend. And thank you for joining us today. And that will be it. Thanks so much. Have a good day.